This episode is brought to you by my good friends at Huzo. Huzo is an acronym for human sound. Huzo delivers uniquely enhanced human toning sounds through headphones as well as through pads placed on your major acupuncture meridians on your body, which are your wrist and your ankles, thereby introducing a specific modulated frequency that are balancing and harmonizing throughout your body. One session takes about 30 minutes, and during that time, a strange series of tones create a natural resonance in your body that Huzo claims counteracts the harmful EMFs, toxins, and stresses you are exposed to during the day or just normal living, all while balancing the body, leaving you with a clear head, improved health, better sleep, and the feeling of calmness and well-being. You can try one at www.thisishuzo.com/rebel. Use the code REBEL25 to save $25. The folks at Huzo even have a great payment solution for you with terms up to 12 months. Check it out. I highly recommend this machine. It has changed my life and calmed me out. Thank you and enjoy this episode.
The assumption that you can just give the low vitamin D person a supplement to bring their level up, and then that will give them the health of the person who did not need those supplements is completely asinine, and it's not working.
Welcome to the Rebel Health Coach Podcast with Tom Underwood. Armed with truth and knowledge, your journey to a healthy lifestyle can be obtained. Preventative wellness, quality nourishment, and daily fitness routines dramatically improve your outlook on life as a whole. And you'll find the support and info you need to accomplish a healthier lifestyle here. Together, we can empower each other along our journey to an amazing you.
Welcome to the Rebel Health Coach Podcast. Today's episode is going to be mind-blowing and epic. It goes against everything I've been taught and learned through my functional medicine practice in school. Dr. Garrett Smith discusses the role of both vitamin D and vitamin A. We also touch base on hair mineral analysis testing, and wow, we dig into hypervitaminosis A or vitamin A toxicity. Crazy episode this is. I hope you enjoy it. And let me go into a little bit about Dr. Garrett Smith himself. Dr. Garrett Smith is a licensed naturopathic physician in the state of Arizona who practices primarily clinical nutrition and functional medicine in Tucson, Arizona. He has written online for 180 Degree Health, the Performance Menu, the Weston A. Price Foundation. He earned his naturopathic medical degree from the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine and his BS in physiology. He has trained and competed in many sports ranging from baseball to triathlons to Olympic weightlifting. His most recent work is the book Solving the Paleo Equation, a collaboration with 180 Degree Health's founder, Matt Stone. He can be found online at nutritionrestored.com. His main goal is to teach people that good health can be obtained without the typical neurotic and fear-driven approaches that have become so trendy in these times. I really hope you enjoy this show. I enjoyed interviewing Dr. Garrett Smith immensely, and I find this subject very, very intriguing and interesting, and I hope you do too. Enjoy the show, and happy Halloween, folks. Dr. Garrett Smith. First of all, I would like to welcome you to the Rebel Health Coach Podcast. I also love the fact that you are a bit of a rebel and don't float the mainstream when it comes to nutrition. And yeah, and that's good though, because a lot of people float the mainstream, and we'll get into that today. But before we do, first of all, how's it going out in Tucson, Arizona today?
It's going great. The weather finally shifted from the crazy hot summer to like the time of year when it's the best to live here. It's like 80s now, and it's great. That's
awesome.
Pool's starting to cool off because I kind of do a little bit of the Wim Hof, cold dip kind of thing. And so I'm looking forward to the pool being cold and all that stuff.
Right. That's awesome. So, all right. I want to know, before we dig into the fat-soluble vitamins A and D, what drove you from being a strength and conditioning coach into this world of naturopathic medicine?
Okay, that's a fun little story. So when I was a teenager, I started lifting weights in my house with little 5-pound dumbbells when I was about 11. Because my dad got me a bodybuilding book and I thought it was really cool and I wanted the big muscles like so many other people. So I started doing that, kept lifting weights, got into high school. My first job was in a gym, being a night janitor. And so I could pay for my membership. I didn't realize that they were actually I was getting shafted because I was just working in exchange for a free membership. And I figured out later that I could have easily paid for my membership and still gotten money on the side. But it all worked out. Anyway, so I started working in gyms. I became a personal trainer. My first personal trainer cert was at 18. Went to college. Decided while I was there, I got out of mechanical engineering. That was my first thing. Then I got into physiology. So just kind of, it's a funny thing. I was deciding on my major after I decided I didn't want to do mechanical engineering. I said, well, what do I want to do? And I saw this title of a book called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. And I thought, okay, what do I love to do? And I thought, what do I do in my spare time? And that was lifting weights. And so I thought, is there a degree in lifting weights? And there wasn't. And I didn't want to be a PE teacher, but then I saw physiology and I got into that. And then I became a strength coach while I was in college and ended up becoming the head personal trainer at the U of A for a bit. And then, so I was working after college, I was working in a supplement store. And my boss put up a poster on the side of the freezer. And it was for naturopathic medical school. And I'd kind of seen the books around the store and thought, I'd learned about NDs and kind of the mail order, degrees, the correspondence degrees. And that was not legit enough for me. So I didn't really become interested. But when I saw the poster on the side of the fridge and I realized that, and I did my research and I saw that in Arizona, naturopathic doctors were licensed physicians, I was like, this is what I need to do, because so fitness tends to lead to nutrition. And for me, fitness and nutrition together led to medicine, because I'll admit I got into medicine for selfish reasons. It was because I wanted to know how to fix me. This is the only body I have, so I better know how it works, right? And so that's why I got into it. And then naturopathic medicine, as I dug deeper, I'm a huge fan of having a very strong philosophy in what you do, because in what I do, it gives me guidance and it helps me decide what to do and what not to do. And naturopathic medicine had some very strong philosophical foundations. First, do no harm, doctor as teacher, things of this nature. And the funny thing was as I got out of naturopathic medical school, I still stuck to the philosophy a lot. And it ended up that nutrition became very much the first treat the cause. We're trying to treat the root cause, not the symptoms. And I do believe that many of our problems are rooted in nutrition. I mean, there's always toxic exposures. There's, the shots, there's glyphosate, there's all sorts of things that are poisoning us, but then there's also getting the right nutrients in. So I took a saying that one of my teachers told me once, the philosophy, naturopathic medicine philosophy class. He said, give the body what it needs, help it get rid of what it doesn't want, and then get the hell out of the way. And I think a lot of my colleagues just kind of like left that behind. That was kind of like cute, but they kind of forgot about it. And I was like, that is everything. That is health. Give the body what it needs, even if that's just exercise, right? We all need to move our bodies, and take away what it doesn't need, whether that's, poisonous recreational things that we're doing, or people or whatever. And then you let the body do what it is designed to do, and it can fix itself amazingly. Anyway, so I just got into nutrition. That became my thing because it is as we'll talk about today, it is kind of a never-ending rabbit hole. So that's kind of how I got here.
Okay. I'm with you there. It is a never-ending rabbit hole, especially in today's world.
Yes.
I mean, when our parents grew up, or our grandparents are our parents, but I'm 60, so my parents were a little older than yours, or are a little older. My mother is at least. But the stuff that we ate from the garden was pure.
Yes.
And now our soil's horrible, and everything we buy from the grocery store, even sometimes the farmer's market, is bad.
Yeah.
Before we dig into the fat-soluble vitamins A and D, which are only 2 of the 4, but the main 2, in my opinion, you're a big fan of HTMA, or hair mineral analysis testing.
Yes.
And I'm familiar with it only from a heavy metal standpoint from Great Plains Labs. But before we dive in, why is this one of you? I've been following you about it on Facebook. And why is this one of your favorite go-to tests over all the other testing available?
Well, what I figured out, I've always been trying to figure out how to assess, people's nutrition in the best way possible. And it was one day on Facebook where a friend of mine on Facebook said, I just got my certificate in hair mineral analysis, and it's a really great tool and all this stuff. And I kind of started asking her some questions. And I did some hair mineral analysis on myself while I was in naturopathic school. And I felt like I could see the potential in it. But the diet that they gave me with my report was too strict. The supplements, the thing that I didn't like about it at the time was they were just doing the hair test and saying, you need to eat this way and take these supplements. And I was like, why? Because I want to know why. And no one was out there. Even the guy I did this with, he was a chiropractor and an ND. Even the guy I did this with didn't explain why I needed what on the hair test indicated I needed this. And because hair testing results are not as simple as just like you're high or you're low, take this or don't. It's so much more complicated than that. So I saw the potential. I did it for a little while. I actually felt like later that after the 2 rounds of testing that I did, that I didn't feel better enough to continue doing it. So I just kind of let it go. And then I learned what I learned in school, and then I went into practice and I was doing it. And then I think it was about 10 or 12, about 10 years into my practice that this came up again. And I looked into it again, and I took the course on it. And I thought it's good for, the thing about any test is you have to know what it's good for and what it's not. Screwdriver's a great tool for screws, and you can do some other minor things with it, but it's not really good for hammering in nails. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we have to know which test is going to show us the right information that we're trying to look for. The great thing about hair analysis is it shows the mineral flows in the blood over a period of time. So it's not just within the last couple of days. Because if your listeners probably know this, but like if somebody ate a big steak on the morning of their blood draw, like their serum iron is going to be really high.
Exactly.
Right. So that makes serum iron very, very malleable by what you eat or don't eat. So that's why we have to do multiple tests for iron in the blood, because I talk about iron, but iron's tricky. The hair test is garbage for iron. You cannot use hair testing for iron because any mineral that has multiple binding proteins, like iron has, transferrin, it's got ferritin, it's got hepcidin, it's got all sorts of binding proteins. It will not show up well on a hair test. And because iron has so many binding proteins, you have to do blood. You got to look at it from multiple angles. The TIBC, serum iron, iron saturation, ferritin. We got to look at it from multiple angles. Iron's one of the sneakiest ones out there. So I would say people using hair analysis for iron are misguided, whereas blood tests are much more helpful for that. Whereas like magnesium, a lot of people will try to do, red blood cell magnesium, which is all right. But the hair test magnesium, especially as it relates to hair calcium levels, gives us a much better picture of how someone's magnesium supplementation is working. And it just helps. So, and doing all the blood tests for minerals would tend to get quite cost prohibitive.
Right.
Whereas for one simple, I think if somebody bought a hair test a la carte from us, I think it's $120 and you get 36 different minerals.
Wow.
Or I should say it's 130 if you include boron. I think. Don't quote me on price. But I think it's 130 because they just added, you got to pay an extra charge to do boron now. Because boron is apparently hard. Like ARL doesn't even run boron anymore. But TEI started charging a bit extra for it. Anyway, with hair analysis, with seeing, I think it's the WHO has said that hair analysis is the best thing to assess if there's been toxic metal exposures over time, because you have I call the hair test, it's kind of like tree rings of people. So if you imagine if you had like the branches on the furthest branches, your hair is like the furthest branches, and you could cut the branch and look at the tree rings.
Okay. And
you get to see what the nutrients were in there.
That makes sense.
So for the minerals, these things have to make sense in my own head.
Right.
So right. I'm good at making analogies. And then once I get them, I'm like, people like the analogies, and that really worked for me. So, but tree rings can't tell you everything about what was going on with the tree. They don't tell you why it's going on. So the hair test is great at telling you what was moving through the blood at a particular time. Now, the key thing about that is things are moving in the body. So if you're like taking a bunch of nutrients, they're coming in the body and they get places via the blood, which flows past the hair, which then if there's a lot of something in the blood, you tend to see it rise in the hair. Okay. The problem is let's say somebody was doing something like, let's say, taking vitamin D supplements that was causing them to lose. I have a study in rats that shows this. Vitamin D supplements were causing them to lose potassium at a rapid rate. Well, then you've got tons of potassium in the blood and it's flowing past the hair too. And then you might see the hair potassium go up for a short period of time until it runs low. But you might see the hair potassium spike up because the body is actually losing it. But all the minerals use the same road, and that's the blood.
Okay.
So when we look at a hair test, this is something that I do feel like I specialize in compared to the techniques I've heard of other people using, is realizing that the hair test is just showing us an average of things that were happening in the blood over time. So if something's elevated, we go, well, is it high because somebody was taking something? We can look into their diet and see were they taking a lot of it? Or is it high because they were losing something because of something they were doing or something they were taking? So the other thing I do with the hair test a lot is we can figure out, we definitely want to figure out with any lab tests if there's any errors or contamination or problems with it. One of the issues with hair analysis is that we're sending a medical test for people to do at home. So, it's a medical test, but it's done in the real world, which makes it a little more, you got to make sure it's not messy and there's not contaminations or other things going on. So that's one of the things I've also really kind of refined about hair testing is figuring out when we have good numbers. And if we don't think we have good numbers, how did that happen? How can we figure out to make it not happen again? And does that really affect our treatment? Okay. But sometimes it doesn't. But hair analysis is great. Calcium, what the hair analysis can show us, it can show us if we're depositing calcium into tissues, especially, it can show us how our magnesium supplementation is working. Sodium, potassium, that's a huge topic. I'm not going to get into that today, but hair analysis is not, the sodium and potassium on hair analysis is not that indicative of much of anything. Copper and zinc, those on a hair test I only use those to back up the blood copper and zinc levels. Then, we get into Iron we don't use on the hair test. Manganese, can't use it. It goes right with iron. The toxic elements we got are helpful, but to an extent. We got great ones to use the hair test for levels: selenium, boron, chromium. Molybdenum is a huge one. Too many people these days do not understand the critical nature of molybdenum in human health and liver function. So molybdenum is just amazing on it. And then there's the little germanium, which is down on the additional elements, the green chart, which is an amazing mineral, but it's next to impossible to get these days because it's not in supplements anymore, and it's really only in. I'm not recommending garlic much these days. That's a whole nother story. So reishi mushrooms is really the only place to get germanium, and it has to be grown on wood, not on grain.
Rice.
Yeah, they're not on rice or oats because those grew in the soil that has no germanium in it. Whereas the only reason the trees have it is because they're old.
Right.
And they had germanium before it was all gone from the soil. So anyway, but yeah, I love hair analysis. I love the blood tests. I do 6 blood tests. That's it for the nutrition stuff I need. But hair testing is what I built my reputation on. And I love hair testing. I do want my blood tests because I need the zinc and copper and iron and vitamin A for toxicity. Those are the ones I really, really need to see in the blood. But everything else on the hair test is great.
Okay, cool. What if you don't have any hair?
If you don't have any hair, well, I mean, funny story. I'll just throw this out there. I had a woman once who contacted my office. She wanted to do hair analysis. So she's signing up for hair analysis, right? She says, well, I won't cut my hair. Okay. Well, and she said, my office manager tells her, well, you could do, if you absolutely will not cut your hair, you could do pubic hair or you could do armpit hair. She goes, well, I shave those. Okay, cool. For whatever floats your boat. We would need you to grow it out for a little while so you could get some, so we could get a sample. Here's what she says. I'm not willing to do that. Well, then we have no more options. So anyway, so for people the hair is typically for people like, let's say if we had a man who was balding, we like the hair I call it the mullet area. We want the hair to come from, if you drew lines from the ears to the crown of the head.
Okay.
And back. That's where we want the sample from. So basically the back of your head.
Okay.
The mullet, right?
Right.
So people can get it from there, and that's usually the hair sample is only a little bit of hair. So usually people are cool with that. When people absolutely will not cut hair on their head, or if they really don't, guys who shave their head, we usually just tell them, look, you got to grow it out for like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. You get the clippers, clean them off real good, put them on the shortest setting, and then just get the hair off the back of your head that you need. A scale comes with the hair test, and just make sure you got enough hair, and that's usually good to go. I mean, I do my hair test monthly to keep. People don't need to do it monthly. Most of the time, we have people do a follow-up hair test within 3 to 6 months. I do mine monthly because I have a really short hairstyle, and it's easy for me, and I'm kind of obsessed with this stuff. So and I get my hair test done for free since I send them so many tests. So anyway, I love doing the hair test.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm going to try it. I'm definitely going to try it.
It is very worth it. It can really, all of a sudden, like if people had chronic fungal infections and they couldn't figure it out. I mean, I've got 4 minerals that I call the antifungal minerals. We got zinc, selenium, boron, and molybdenum. And once, I had somebody the other day, they're like, oh my gosh, I've had candida problems like my whole life, yeast infections and all that stuff. And I'm going through her nutrition and I'm telling her, well, you are low in every single one of the antifungal minerals.
Wow.
It's not surprising you've got fungal issues, yeast issues, that kind of stuff. So it's really, it becomes, because I mean, as you know, in the alternative health world, people will hammer at candida and fungus and yeast with antifungals and anti-yeast stuff, and they'll hammer at it for years and it just keeps coming back.
Right.
The solution is to figure. An analogy I use a lot is if you leave garbage sitting around, it's going to attract flies.
Eventually,
right?
yes.
The solution then, what most people are doing, whether they're doing it with natural things or artificial, synthetic things, medications or herbs, they try to come and like spray poison on the garbage to kill the flies and make the flies stay away. Right? That's what they're doing by trying to kill the pathogen. You may have killed the flies or driven the flies away, but now you just made that garbage, which is part of you, more toxic. We didn't, the solution is to take out the garbage, get rid of the garbage, and then the flies don't want to be around anymore because there's nothing for them to use. So we're always trying to like think of the root cause. I do another analogy with a garden in terms of the gut biome that a lot of people like. But the answer is generally not in trying to obliterate whatever is growing. The answer is to make the environment healthy enough that your own immune system is getting rid of stuff, cleaning up the stuff that it's supposed to clean up. And then you can just, oftentimes the problem will just go away, or then you just do a little bit of something to kill the stragglers, and then it stays away because the environment has been changed. So that's why I like to do the nutrients. I mean, I remember reading a veterinary book by, is it Pitcairn? He's kind of a very alternative vet, if I'm remembering the name right. But he was saying, he's like, I don't see parasite issues in really healthy dogs. He's like, you see it's like the parasites almost, they need the sicker dog to kind of latch onto. When a dog's really healthy, they don't tend to latch onto them because there's parasites all around.
Right.
Actually, I have a great example of that. I used to have tinea versicolor, which was a skin fungus where people they're either on their very pale spots, the spots are kind of pinkish. If they're tanned in areas, then the spots are very white. That's all it does. It just affects the melanin production in the areas. It doesn't do anything to you. But this is in my early days of nutrition. I went to go see a dermatologist. He gave me ketoconazole, which causes vitamin A toxicity in its own mechanism. That's a whole nother story. And it kills testosterone. So guys should never use any of the azole, the antifungal meds. The research is out there on it, just crushing testosterone. But anyway, so the doctor said, well, you got this tinea versicolor. I'll give you this ketoconazole, but it's in the air. It's everywhere. If you are susceptible to it, it's going to come back every summer because you're just one of the people who gets it. And I was like, okay. I mean, in a way, and I mean this in the nicest way, I was like, well, what's wrong with me that I get it and not everybody else gets it? What's the difference? So I started doing some research, and they also said, I went back to him again the next year. He gives me a ketoconazole shampoo, and I was like, screw this. I'm not doing this again. So I was reading that you could do Selsun Blue, selenium shampoo. And I started thinking, so they were saying to use Selsun Blue on your skin, you would rub it over the tinea versicolor areas, which is usually in like the folds, your armpits, your elbows, like under your chest line as a guy. So they said you just rub the Selsun Blue on, let it sit, so you'd like be walking around your house with like caked on drying shampoo on your skin. Leave it on for 20 or 30 minutes. And I was just like, I'm not going to do that. But I thought, if the active ingredient in Selsun Blue, SEL, is selenium, maybe my problem is I'm selenium deficient. And by applying it to your skin, kind of like topical magnesium, it's the exact same thing. What if we're just giving that skin selenium, and that is what's getting rid of the tinea versicolor? So I'm not advising anyone to do this. I'm not saying this is the tinea versicolor cure. But what I was doing at the time was I was doing kind of Matt Stone stuff. I was eating more food in general to try to raise my metabolic rate. But I also thought, I'm going to fill up that selenium deficiency that I assumed I had. Back then, I was guessing, not testing. So for a month, I took 3 selenium pills, 600 micrograms of selenium, which is like the maximum allow the maximum suggested dose of selenium that anyone does for a short period of time. So I did 600 micrograms for a month. I think I did 400 micrograms for another month or two. And then I went down to 200 micrograms. And lo and behold, after all of that, it was still the winter in Arizona, so I wasn't getting much sun. But the summer was coming around. I could still see this, because tinea versicolor, the spots don't go away until you get enough sun on them so that you tan. Because if the fungus dies, it just leaves it the way it was. And so it turns out when I went out and got some sun, the spots went back to normal. It went back to my normal skin color. So that was like one of the early examples of where I was going, it's a nutrition problem. What are the things that we can do for this nutrition problem? And I got lucky on that one, I'll admit. It could have been zinc, because they use what's in Head and Shoulders, right? It's zinc. So it's funny when they use nutrients to fix things, even in over-the-counter kind of more pharmaceutical things. And you start going, maybe that is the fix. So, yeah, I mean, but I didn't have hair analysis back then. Had I had hair analysis back then, I could have very easily seen that on a hair analysis and addressed it and just seen it go away. I used to have a couple little teeny skin tags. And I found that as I did, I tend to believe that skin tags are related to blood sugar issues, which I knew I had some hypoglycemia. Skin tags often show up in diabetics. I started using a lot of topical magnesium. And I believe magnesium, along with chromium, are two of the most important minerals in terms of getting nutrients. Magnesium and chromium are the most important nutrients in terms of helping with blood sugar stability. Removing vitamin A toxicity is even more important, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So anyway, I started using a bunch of topical magnesium. And then all of a sudden, one day I'm looking at my little skin tags and they're gone. And I went, well, that's weird. Guess it was the magnesium. So this is where it's kind of fun in my real life. I've seen with my own stuff, I've seen nutrients, not medications, be the answer. And then as long as you maintain your nutrient status and you avoid the toxicity status, these things stay away.
That's pretty interesting.
I'll get to another story about vitamin A when I get to my dad, when we get to that part.
Okay.
Because that's another interesting one. But so yeah, that's how I got through all that stuff. Let me add one more thing. When I learned about hair analysis, what I was taught, I didn't feel, I question everything. And I definitely did not feel like, for whatever reason, I did not feel like what I was taught in hair analysis was justified in the research well enough. So I basically went and I was working with clients and I decided to break everything, because the supplements that the companies sell are often big combination supplements. And I've never been a fan of big combination supplements, because if your body doesn't agree with one ingredient in it, then you can't take it. It's probably worse for you than it is beneficial. So what I did was I broke down all of I kind of reversed engineered the hair analysis stuff. I started seeing patterns of, what I'm good at is seeing patterns. I started seeing patterns of what they recommended, because they don't tell you why they're recommending it. So I started seeing the patterns of what was recommended when. I started with my own clients, I was giving them individual nutrients instead of big combination stuff. And I figured out what was supposed to be doing what. And I started watching it and saying, is it doing what I'm told it's supposed to be doing? And if it didn't, then I would start figuring out, well, what was doing that? And so I kind of questioned the whole hair analysis setup. And I think a lot of the things taught in hair analysis are actually completely wrong. So yeah, I definitely the rebel and the nutrition detective kind of that's kind of what I do, and I'm just always after the truth, and I'm after figuring out the why if I can, and if I can't figure out the why, but I know something works and it doesn't cause problems, first do no harm, right? Then I'm fine with using it. Like, I don't know how, I don't know how the light switch works to turn on the light, but I can use it. So people go, well, we don't know how homeopathy works. And I'm like, yeah, but it works and we can use it. I don't know how prayer works. How many people pray? They don't know how it works, but
it works.
It seems to help, right? So are we going to not do that because somebody said, well, you don't know how that works? I'm like, that would seem not intelligent. So anyway.
All right. Thank you for the descriptions on the higher mineral analysis. I love that.
Yes. I
want to dig in today. Hopefully we can get to both of these fat-soluble vitamins. But first of all, I want to start out with hypervitaminosis A.
Hypervitaminosis A.
Which is what?
Which is what?
Which is what I've been following you on, because it's very interesting, because we're taught, especially now that we're going into cold and flu season, that we're taught that we're deficient in vitamin A. Of course, we're also taught we're deficient in vitamin D.
Yes.
And you, being the rebel that you are and the investigator that you are, have come out with a lot of stuff on Facebook regarding chronic hypervitaminosis A, or vitamin A toxicity.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because both of these vitamins, A and D, are kind of like a double-edged sword. Both are over-supplemented, and usually with cheap supplements from the grocery store, they pick off A and D. Both of them cause major issues if they're toxic, if we have toxicity of them.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're taught that both of these elements, or vitamins, sorry, not elements, are deficient in most people in the United States.
Yes. And
there's some interesting, like, optimal levels of vitamin A, according to blood test, which is a retinol, are 300 to 800 nanograms per milliliter.
Yeah, I tend to go with micrograms per deciliter.
Okay.
So what you were saying 300 to 800. So I usually go by 30 to 80.
Okay, 30 to 80.
But that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I agree with. So go ahead.
Right. But I was just saying, I've been taught in my schooling that those are the levels to look for, and is nanograms or milligrams, or
right.
And vitamin D, but we'll get to that. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole yet, because preparing for the vitamin D is 40 to 60 is optimal, 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter. But look, I mean, this is interesting because we're taught that vitamin A is needed for our immune system. And one thing, after going down rabbit holes the last couple of days, because I went down a lot of rabbit holes putting this together. And it's because I was following like some of your references on your posts. And this is amazing because we're missing a big boat here, in my opinion, as far as vitamin A toxicity and vitamin D. But let's start with vitamin A toxicity. First of all, how do you know somebody's toxic in vitamin A, or how does it manifest itself? What symptoms are you seeing?
Oh gosh, this is such a big topic. It's always so hard for me to get into it, because this is unwinding what I believe to be the greatest poisoning of humanity that has ever happened. And I have suspicions that part of it was on purpose, but I also think that the problem has gotten so big that even if it was on purpose, the people who started it, it's out of their control and they don't even know that it's happening to them. So that's a whole nother topic. But vitamin A. So I learned about vitamin A toxicity from, Matt Stone, good buddy of mine, 180 Degree Health. He made some posts on Facebook. And after I kind of got over because I was using vitamin A supplements at the time with my people, because that's what I was taught in hair analysis. They said, if you use vitamin A, to bring hair calcium down, it works. So that, if they have high hair calcium, they've got a vitamin A deficiency. And that did work. So I did it, and I thought vitamin A toxicity was overblown and all that stuff, and it hardly ever happened. So then Matt posted about Grant Generou's work. And I went and I thought, after I saw it the second time and I read Matt's article on it, because Matt's a contrarian. He loves to question stuff. So he and I get along amazingly. And I went and I read Grant's, because I read Grant's first free ebook. So if anybody who's listening wants to get any of Grant wrote his ebooks, they're all free. It's GGENEREUX.blog. So grantgeneru.blog, basically. He has 3 free ebooks there. And I started reading the first one. And I tend to grab onto things pretty quick. And in my work, I'm always questioning what I'm doing, because that's the only way you get better. So I had some people who I wasn't helping as much as I wanted. And there was also some people who I'd been working with for a long time, and most of their health stuff had gone away. But then over years, sometimes new little things were creeping up. I was going, okay. So I don't assume, this is something that I do that not everybody can manage, but if people we're getting better with me and over time, and then something is slipping away, I question what I'm doing. I don't assume that they're doing something wrong. I'm constantly questioning what I'm doing. How can I make it better? So I was thinking about those people, and I got about halfway through Grant's first book. And I kind of pushed my chair away from the computer. And I was just in shock. And I was like, oh my God, I have to change everything.
I don't mean to laugh, but that's...
Yeah, no, I saw exactly what I had been trying to work on, or the things that were creeping up in people, was vitamin A toxicity. And I've been using vitamin A with people, and I went, this is it. And then I thought, one of the things I'd seen in my clients was I had a couple women where they had high hair calcium. And I kept giving them vitamin A, and it didn't bring it down. It would not budge it. They wouldn't come below 200. Like, I want people at a 40. And they wouldn't come below 200. I was going, what is wrong? And then I realized, so I thought, okay, let me go Google vitamin A hypercalcemia, right? Because there's not going to be a lot on hair test calcium.
Right.
So high calcium in the blood would tend to lead to high calcium in the hair. And I type in vitamin A hypercalcemia, and boom, 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 boom. Just case study after case study, paper after paper. I went, that's it. This is the answer to the questions that I didn't know how to ask. And so then doing what I do, what I'm good at, I take concepts from other people. I am not the original idea man. Grant, I will always be thankful for him bringing this idea to my attention. I simply take good ideas and I flesh them out, and I figure out how to solve the problems. That's what I do. So somebody else tells me the problem.
Right.
And I'm the problem fixer. I have a saying at the house that the kids can say whenever Daddy fixes something, which is Daddy fixes everything. They like to say, I say, what's the saying again? And they go, Daddy fixes everything. And I go, yep, there you go. So, so I started looking into the vitamin A toxicity, and I just started going, this is a really big deal. And I started reading about some of the detox cycles that I could glean from Grant's work. I was taking like 25,000 unit vitamin A pills like 3 days a week. So I was trying to average out about 10,000 a day. And I thought the first thing I'm going to do on this vitamin A toxicity thing was just stop the supplements. I wasn't going to do the diet yet. I just stopped the supplements. Within a week, I started feeling bad. Now, vitamin A deficiency does not happen in a week.
Okay.
I have research showing that it takes 2 years to deplete a normal person's liver of vitamin A. So everybody's worried about deficiency when in the research it shows that like you have to be on an extremely low vitamin A diet for up to 2 years before you can clear the liver out of it. So anyone who's worried about vitamin A deficiency when they're eating a normal American diet, it's not vitamin A deficiency. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Anyway, I stopped the supplement. Within a week, I started getting symptoms. And I went, that's weird. And I thought, I wonder if this is the dumping. It makes sense to me that if vitamin A is a toxin, a poison, that we're going to start dumping it. And I ran with that idea. And eventually the problems went away. And I started talking to my clients about it. I started working it into things. And over time, as people stuck with it, this is a decades-long poisoning that people are doing to themselves. And so it takes a year or more, probably more, for a lot of the really poisoned people to get this stuff out of their system. Grant and I were talking the other day, and Grant's really appreciative of what I've done because he knows, I understand what he did, and he understands what I'm doing now. And he said, we have to figure out how to make this go faster because it's taking too long. We are seeing people heal from all sorts of things, but it's just taking so long. And one of the things I'm working on right now is the relationship of good sulfurs and bad sulfurs to how vitamin A is detoxed in the body. And it is the most critical part of this work because this impacts so many things. And so many people are trying to detox and they're using tons of sulfur things. And if they're using the wrong ones or too much, they are actually making their problems worse. So it's like we need sulfur. Sulfur is a double-edged sword. Vitamin A is not a double-edged sword to me. Vitamin A is all bad, in my opinion. But sulfur is definitely a two-edged sword, double-edged sword. Okay. So anyway, so vitamin A toxicity. So we're getting into this and I start working on it. And as an example, my dad, I know you and I were talking before we got on about family health issues, stuff like that. And my dad, rest in peace, he died of prostate cancer. And in my 20s, I started getting urinary symptoms that seemed a lot like BPH. And I was kind of dealing with those. I mean, I'd have to, in my 20s and 30s, and I'd have to pee. Like I would have to go to the bathroom to pee like 5 times before I could go to sleep. I couldn't sleep. If I had any urine left, I could not sleep. And now that I've done the vitamin A thing, I found enough research linking prostate hypertrophy to like prostate cancer risk. If you go and look in the research, which I posted on my website, if you look at the research, prostate cancer risk and prostate enlargement basically rise with serum retinol levels. They see that those go up together. And so you go, well, geez, that seems pretty obvious, right? So now that I've been detoxing vitamin A long enough, all of my urinary issues are gone. So usually you don't hear men talking about like they get urinary issues in their 20s and they're better in their 40s, right? It's usually the opposite.
Okay.
So that was one of the things I fixed. I remember my dad had really bad allergies. I was getting allergies as I got older too. That all went away. I remember my dad used to complain about his insomnia. And I had horrible insomnia. And that's now gone. I mean, I have sleep problems like everybody else does. Work and family and other stress can mess with your sleep. But when things are normal, I sleep amazing. It's like sleeping through the night now. So not only did the insomnia go away, but the peeing in the middle of the night went away. And so now I can sleep end to end on the night, which wasn't happening, since medical school. It was crazy that I started feeling like I got sick during medical school, during the naturopathic. Or at least that's when all these things came to a head. So, okay, so then we get into vitamin A toxicity because one of the things that people will say is they'll say, well, I don't take vitamin A supplements and I don't eat liver. How in the world could I get vitamin A toxic? Well, first of all, the biggest mistake that people make is they will say, you cannot get vitamin A toxic from food. That is the biggest unscientific lie that has ever been said in nutrition. I have papers on a guy getting vitamin A toxicity from carrot juicing. I have tons of studies of people getting vitamin A toxic from eating liver from sharks, liver from cod livers, liver from other fish, liver from wolves. Not wolves, huskies. People have gotten vitamin A toxic from every single type of liver. And the oldest known case of vitamin A toxicity is, but somewhere they're estimating between 1.5 and 1.75 million years old. And they could see the bone changes typical of hypervitaminosis A, of vitamin A toxicity, because they believe that, kind of in those early days of people, they would eat the liver because the liver was very soft and very easy to eat versus muscles that are encased in fascia. So they ate the liver first, not because it was some super nutrition thing, but because it was soft and easy to get to and big. So anyway, they've got an Inuit woman who has signs of vitamin A toxicity from like 1400 years ago. Like vitamin A toxicity has been around forever, and it can happen from foods completely. So just on that note, what are we all encouraged to eat, right? We're encouraged to eat a rainbow of colors.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you that nearly all of the yellow color of stuff that of the part we actually eat, yellow color and orange color is all carotenoids, which is vitamin A. Carotenoids or vitamin A, there is no vitamin A retinol in animals without carotenoids. We can cut carotenoids up into retinol. Animals cut carotenoids up into retinol. So there is no retinol without carotenoids. That's the thing that people don't understand. They'll say, oh, that's not vitamin A. There is no vitamin A without carotenoids. I don't understand why so many people will suspend their like intelligence about the topic of vitamin A. And it's because what we've been taught. It's much easier to just rehash things than to think about them. So we're taught to eat a rainbow, right? And then there's the big fad of like, in certain circles, traditional nutrition circles, where people are eating tons of egg yolks. Eggs, the egg yolk is the vitamin A part. They're eating liver. They're eating other organ meats. They're eating tons of dairy, whether it's raw or pasteurized or whatever. These are all vitamin A disasters. So you can have people doing like the carnivore diet and just eating ungodly amounts of vitamin A. And then they wonder why they don't get the same results as what's her name, Michaela Peterson, where she's eating beef, water, and salt. I can tell you that there's two versions of the carnivore diet. One, the beef, water, salt is extremely low in vitamin A. And then they see autoimmune issues go away. Funny, that little connection. And then there's the people doing the carnivore diet where they don't understand the difference between muscle meat and organ meats and eggs and butter and these other things that are super high in that are high in vitamin A. And then they wonder why after a while they don't feel good, why they're getting worse. That was one of my early things. I used to eat when I was into the primal diet, if you know what that is, Agenus Wonderplanets. I was doing the raw milk and the raw eggs and the raw liver. I was making raw liver and blueberry smoothies, frozen blueberry. Oh. Yeah, I know. But I thought, I'm going to be super healthy. I'm going to be so healthy. So I did that. And after a couple weeks or months of doing that, I started thinking, and I went, I don't really enjoy these that much. So then I thought, well, am I feeling better? Am I feeling like superhuman? And then I went, I think I'm not feeling better. I might actually be feeling worse. And so then I stopped him and I went back to feeling better again. So these were some of my forays into vitamin A toxicity that I didn't even realize was happening. So we have the food. So there's, and studies have specifically said that it didn't matter whether the source of vitamin A was natural or synthetic. The effects were the same. So science has said that the effects are the same. I've got research on vitamin A toxicity from both natural and supplemental sources. It's just much easier to overdo it with supplements. So we have natural foods. We have fortified foods. We fortify our dairy with vitamin A. Most of the nut milks and the seed milks out there are fortified with vitamin A. There's probably lots of other products that are fortified with vitamin A, but those are the big ones that most people are being exposed to is dairy and like the alternative milks. So we have food fortification. Then we get into many medications and possibly those certain immune shots that were given. Many of those seem to slow down, block, or permanently damage the vitamin A detox pathways. And we can see this is in the literature, like birth control pills are known to slow down the alcohol dehydrogenase pathway, which is also known in the literature as retinol dehydrogenase, because retinol is the alcohol form of vitamin A. So this is why women who are on the birth control pill are told, be careful with your alcohol intake because you'll get drunk much more easily on the birth control pill because it stops the very enzyme that breaks down alcohol, which is also the same enzyme that breaks down vitamin A, which has been shown in the literature to cause vitamin A toxicity in women who are on the birth control pill. I have the research. So that's like one example. Ketoconazole slows down the azole medications, the azole antifungals. They slow down vitamin A breakdown. Lots of medications do this. Somebody sent me the other day a couple of links about case studies of kids who were given their immune shots, if you want to call them that, and they started getting idiopathic intracranial hypertension. So their head was starting to swell. They were getting the bulging fontanelles. That is a classic symptom of vitamin A toxicity. Their cerebrospinal fluid is basically expanding and is pushing out on their head. And this is the source of a lot of people's headaches, whether it's migraines or tension headaches or any of that stuff. Headaches are an extremely well-known side effect of vitamin A toxicity. So we have medications and the shots. Then we have things like glyphosate. Glyphosate or Roundup actually has research on it specifically blocking the cytochrome systems, the phase 1 detox of the liver that specifically deals with retinoic acid, which is one of the thought to be the most active form of vitamin A. Probably, it's super toxic. How toxic is retinoic acid? Well, retinoic acid, you can look it up. It's used as chemotherapy. I don't hear about chemotherapy being healthy. It's been studied to use as an adjuvant in those immune shots. It has been, there's a paper on using synthetic retinoids, vitamin A's, as antibiotics. These are all things that we all want to be taking in adjuvants and chemotherapy and antibiotics, right? So if people try to avoid these medications, I'm guessing most people listening to this would want to avoid those medications.
Right.
They use retinoic acid as an adjuvant, as chemotherapy, and there's papers on using them as antibiotics. Oh, there's also a paper on using retinoic acid, inhibiting retinoic acid metabolism as a supposedly reversible anti-fertility, birth control for men. So we have lots of men wondering why they're not functioning well down there or why their testosterone sucks. There are papers out there where they are theorizing that they can shut down our vitamin A metabolism and it will temporarily cause us to become infertile. I can tell you that it's not temporary because there's a citizen's petition to add a black box warning to Accutane, which is vitamin A, because of what they call post-retinoid sexual dysfunction, which is long-term sexual problems induced by taking vitamin A, Accutane. Let me explain that for 1 second.
Okay.
All people will say, well, Accutane or Retin-A, those are synthetic vitamin A's. Accutane is 13-cis-retinoic acid. Retin-A is Atra, which is all-trans retinoic acid. Both of these, I have the papers. People on normal diets who are consuming vitamin A have 13-cis-retinoic acid and all-trans retinoic acid running through their bloodstream, coming out in their urine. So if you are eating, so carotenoids break down into retinol or retinol esters. Retinol or retinol esters break down into retinoic acids. Retinoic acids are then, the idea is then the liver, phase 1, phase 2, breaks them down and gets rid of them. So if somebody is eating vitamin A in any form, carotenoids, retinol, any of that stuff, it is, scientifically speaking, biochemically, it is going to end up, some of it as basically Accutane, 13-cis-retinoic acid, and some of it will end up as all-trans retinoic acid, which is also known as Retin-A. So what I tell people is if you want to know if you have a vitamin A toxicity issue, go look at the side effect lists for Accutane and Retin-A. And if you have any of those side effects on that list, it is totally plausible and that you have vitamin A toxicity. So go and look. Do me a favor. 13-cis-retinoic acid, all-trans retinoic acid, Retin-A and Accutane, they are the active forms of vitamin A. This is what the literature says. Go look at their side effect lists. If you think that when you see commercials on TV that the side effect lists seem to be kind of long and terrible. Go look at the side effect lists for Accutane and Retin-A. They are pages long. If you go to the correct website, if you go to the practitioner lists of side effects. So how can somebody, this is one thing that Grant will always say, is there's no way that something is this toxic and is somehow needed by the body. It can't be both. The body doesn't play those games.
Right.
The body, I mean, there are things that, the body has to keep. I mean, we can kill ourselves by drinking too much water, right? But that takes a lot of work, right? You have to drink an amazing amount of water to throw that off balance. Quick story about vitamin A and how you won't find this with other vitamins. Like think in your mind, we're in the alternative world. We go, can we actually find people who have killed themselves with vitamins? You start going, boy, that's going to take some thinking, right?
Right.
And you go, I don't know if I could find that. 1974, New York Times article, a quote, I'm doing air quotes here, a scientist killed himself in 10 days, by drinking a gallon of carrot juice a day and I think he was taking about 100,000 units of vitamin A supplement a day for 10 days. Dead, killed himself, 10 days. They said he was bright yellow in color when they found the body.
Wow.
And the funny thing is like when the mainstream media, which has a bad reputation these days, and they firmly deserve it, when they try to talk about supplements are bad, in nearly every article, they say three things. They say vitamin A is a supplement that's dangerous. They say beta carotene, which is vitamin A, and then they throw in vitamin E. Well, let me tell you a little bit about vitamin E. Vitamin E, there is a form of vitamin E that is used in many, many studies called D-alpha tocopherol with a Y acetate. So tocopherol acetate. Tocopherol acetate is toxic in every single study that it's in. But they try to make that the equal of D-alpha tocopherol, the natural stuff that you'd find in like sunflower seeds. So they take a synthetic vitamin E that is known to be toxic, beta carotene, and vitamin A, and that is how they make the case that supplements are dangerous. Funny thing about the vaping controversy going on right now, it is when they say there's vitamin E in these cartridges from China, and that's what's causing the lung problems, it's tocopherol acetate.
Oh, wow.
It's a toxic form of vitamin E oil that they're putting in there, and it is frying people's lungs. So just because they say it's vitamin E doesn't mean it's the same stuff that you would find in food.
Right.
Vitamin E is drastically drained out of the body by vitamin A. And I have tons of studies on the other side showing that vitamin E is very protective against vitamin A toxicity. So the vitamin E topic is a very important one to get right, because it's just, you can't take poisonous form of vitamin and expect it to work the same as the normal stuff, the real stuff. So trying to think of other ways that the vitamin A toxicity happens. So we talked about the glyphosate, we talked about the medications, we talked about eating more in foods, we talked about the fortified foods, we talked about the natural foods. I mean, get this. So for anybody who understands the amount of vitamin A that's in foods, studies have shown that 5,000 IUs of vitamin A intake a day was where that was the level at which above that they could tell increased osteoporosis. Most people out there listening to this, they are probably eating 5,000 units of vitamin A by the time they're done with breakfast or breakfast and lunch. Then dinner just adds more to that. So, and then the Teratology Society, which is trying to prevent birth defects, has said that pregnant women should not eat more than 3,000 units of vitamin A a day to avoid birth defects. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, I talked about the guy who killed himself with vitamin A. In the research, there is a case study of a mother who fed her children chicken liver pate. The 2-year-old died. There was no vitamin A supplement. Child just ate too much chicken liver and died. So again, people who say that liver can't possibly be toxic are so lost. They are so misinformed. They are hurting other people by saying that it's not toxic. I have studies on cod liver oil and vitamin A toxicity from the 1940s. I have quotes from Weston Price saying that cod liver oil could be injurious to children if they took too much for too long. So it's really an amazingly important topic that, and vitamin A doesn't, I saw a quote from somebody the other day on Facebook. They said, I thought extra vitamin A, you just excreted it. And it's like, wait, no, this is the problem with the, as you were saying, the quote unquote fat-soluble vitamins. I do not consider vitamin A a vitamin. Okay. I only consider it a plant toxin. And people love to talk about plant toxins, oxalates, salicylates, and all this stuff. And I'm like, vitamin A is the penultimate plant toxin. It is. I mean, here's another funny story. Paper. There was a person who caused multiple joint arthritis in their rabbit, right? So we picture rabbits with carrots, right? Rabbits and carrots, we think they kind of go together. This person gave their rabbit autoimmune arthritis in multiple joints by feeding it a diet of only carrots. That's just the most ironic thing I've ever heard of. Because people will be like, oh, well, rabbits, they can tolerate carrots just fine. And then you go, no, they can't.
That's a rabbit hole I went down last night until 2:30 in the morning.
Yep.
Because I've been taught that a deficiency in vitamin A leaves our immune system empty.
Right.
And also that vitamin A increases our T regulatory cells to help balance our immune system. And it also prevents autoimmune activation.
Okay.
But then I go to Grant's website and read that toxic vitamin D is actually hindering or actually poisoning autoimmune. It's a poison for autoimmune disease.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, I got to dig down this. So I probably spent an hour last night digging down Grant's website about this. Yes. And it's freaking amazing.
Yes. So remember that, again, Accutane 13-cis-retinoic acid is a normal product in the body that is made from any vitamin A. Some of any vitamin A you eat turns into Accutane. So I have studies, papers, case studies linking autoimmune disease of almost every type of every body tissue to being caused by taking Accutane. So it seems fairly straightforward to me. Once you understand the metabolism of vitamin A and teratogenicity, the birth defect causing effects of vitamin A, why in the world would we think that something that would cause birth defects is okay for adults?
Right.
Like just because we're formed doesn't mean that it can't still screw us up. Like Grant's talking about how he believes his scoliosis is returning to normal. I believe that mine is as well. The bones change. Vitamin A causes osteoporosis. This is not debated in the literature. It's there. And so if it causes osteoporosis, it can also cause bone changes that are then going to show in different ways because of how the bone loss manifests itself. But yeah, the autoimmune stuff, autoimmune disease, in my opinion. So remember how I told you about those immune shots?
Right.
Causing vitamin A toxicity?
Right.
So people will say, well, those shots are what causes autoimmunity. And I'm like, this is the thing that so many people have trouble connecting, is that all these things cause vitamin A toxicity. It is vitamin A that is the toxin, but each of these things, like autoimmunity, is vitamin A toxicity with other things layered on top of it. Alzheimer's. This is one of the biggest articles on my site. Alzheimer's is vitamin A toxicity with aluminum layered on top of it. So people will say, oh, it's aluminum. I'm like, it's not just aluminum. It's the vitamin A. And I have papers showing that aluminum and vitamin A are synergistic in terms of their toxicity. So it's all just It's amazing. So what are we trying to do to fix it? So
That's why
first we take the poison out of the diet as much as we are able to. No one, this is one of the illusions that people have. No one can avoid vitamin A completely. You can't do it. People think, oh, I'm going to eat an all beef diet. An all beef diet is an extremely low vitamin A diet, but there's still grass-fed beef are eating carotenoids, and grain-fed beef are being fed straight up retinol in crazy doses. There's not that much stored in the meat, but there's still some there. I have papers on, I think it's moose meat. Like they measured like vitamin A in the moose bone marrow and in the muscles and in the liver and all these things. And all of them, this is a moose out in the wild. All of them had vitamin A in them. So people make the mistake of they think once they hear that this is a toxin that they're going to avoid it completely. And I'm just like, no, you don't get to do that. Sorry. So get that out of your head. But we try to reduce the terms I use: reduce, minimize, eliminate. We do as much as we can there. Then we need to take out the things in our world that are stopping vitamin A metabolism or breakdown, I should say, detoxification. So certain medications, not getting any more of those shots, avoiding glyphosate. So people need to eat organic as much as possible. Glyphosate just stops this. There's actually at least 3 specific cytochromes that the only function they know of them for is, well, let's go into that for a second. The only function they know of these cytochromes for is for retinoic acid breakdown or conversion. So it can then go into phase 2. So we have 3 separate cytochromes that the only function they know of them is for retinoic acid. Let's back up for a second, because before that, there's alcohol dehydrogenase and aldehyde dehydrogenase. These are my current obsessions right now, because they're also known as retinol dehydrogenase and retinaldehyde dehydrogenase. And they feed into, so it starts at retinol, it goes through alcohol dehydrogenase, it turns into retinaldehyde, and then retinaldehyde goes through retinaldehyde dehydrogenase, and then it is a form of retinoic acid, and then it goes into the cytochromes, and then that goes into phase 2. So think about back before humans had large amounts of alcohol around. Wasn't that long ago that before we had, that we didn't have tons of alcohol around. So if we do make a little bit of alcohol from any of the carbohydrates that we eat, that is true. But back before we had lots of alcohol around, we were being exposed to carotenoids in plants and retinoids, retinol and retinol esters in animal foods. Why do we have retinol dehydrogenase and retinaldehyde dehydrogenase, also known as alcohol dehydrogenase and retinaldehyde dehydrogenase? We have them because they are specifically there to detoxify vitamin A. So now we have multiple enzyme systems and a cytochrome system that are completely devoted to detoxing vitamin A. Tell me any other vitamin that we have like purposeful detox systems for. People would say, well, you don't have detox systems for vitamins. For vitamin A, you do. So we just look at the evidence. Like the more retinoic acid you have in your system. So if retinoic acid, the supposedly active form of vitamin A, was needed by our body. Oh, and another thing, if deficiency was actually a thing. What is shown in study after study, this confuses the scientists so much because they want vitamin A to be good for you, is that the more retinoic acid is in the system, the faster the cytochromes run to get rid of it. Right? If it's a vitamin, why would we run the breakdown faster? That doesn't make any sense. Another thing is when people eat vitamin A, they actually see the gallbladder put out less bile, because bile is what your body needs to absorb vitamin A. Why, when you eat vitamin A, would you put out less bile? Unless your body didn't want it.
Right.
So we have all these signs that the body's just like, oh, get rid of this stuff. This is toxic. And some of the problems that people encounter on the vitamin A detox is they'll feel better. They might go through what we call a detox or a dumping cycle. And the key thing to anybody whoever thinks they're detoxing, is that if you're really detoxing, it should be a fairly short period, days to weeks to maybe a month. And you should feel something is significantly better after you're done with that. So there's all sorts of bunk out there about detoxing where people are like, oh, I'm just detoxing. That's why I felt so bad for so many months. And it's like, no, that's not it. You should be noticing improvements. If you have detox cycles, they come, they go, something is improved. It's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And that is the key thing I always tell people. I had one woman, she was working with another hair analysis person taught by a big guy on the internet who uses ARL labs. She'd been supposedly detoxing or retracing for 2 years straight. She almost lost her marriage because her mental state was in such a mess. And then she comes to me and I'm like, you weren't detoxing. They were just making you sicker.
Right.
At some point you have to realize when you feel bad, detox symptoms are real. They go away and then you feel better. If people don't feel better, like people who go on a cleanse where they're just taking a bunch of diarrhea-inducing herbs, and so they restrict their diet and they have a bunch of diarrhea and they think they feel a little better while they're doing it. Maybe it's because they stopped eating vitamin A. But then they always say, well, I stopped the cleanse and I went back to normal and the problems all just came back. They didn't fix anything. They just induced diarrhea and ate less. Maybe they ate cleaner. So yeah, I hate the word. Cleansing is like, it's so what we're trying to do now. One of the guys I'm working with, and we call it basenutrition.com is another website I work with. But we are talking about science-based detox because there's plenty of science out there. Like when the mainstream talks about how detoxification is a bunch of pseudoscientific mumbo jumbo hocus pocus, I'm like, why are there all these papers on it? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
People don't like homeopathy. I'm like, well, so they gave these mice arsenic toxicity, and then they gave them a homeopathic of arsenic, and the mice who got the homeopathic did better than the ones who didn't get it. Huh. That's weird. Isn't that science? Yes. So one of the things I do for people who are on the vitamin A detox is I do believe, like when you know this, people take medications,
right?
And then they all of a sudden, let's say after that medication, they're like, my health was never the same after I took that medication. You know, women with birth control, anybody with like Cipro where they get floxed, they're like, that thing ruined my health. Well, if they've stopped taking the medication, what happened to their health? What broke? What was damaged? Why isn't it fixing itself? We may not know why it isn't fixing itself, but I can usually go into the literature and show you, oh, here's where it broke the vitamin A system. And here's why you're sick. And here's why you're not getting better because you're still eating vitamin A and your detox system's broke. So one of the things I do for that is called homeopathic detox therapy, where we are actually specifically addressing the medications that broke the system. And it is really helping. Because people whose detox systems are broke, the weird thing is when people stop eating vitamin A, Grant, I'm waiting to get the study from Grant, the paper from Grant, but when you're putting in a toxin, your body stops detoxing it. Because think about it as like a road. If you have too much toxin coming in, if your body's continually dumping the same toxin, well, the blood is the in and the out. So then your blood levels would go crazy high. And the blood is where these things affect your heart and your brain and all these kind of vital things for survival. So your body has mechanisms of, if you are being intoxed, as I call it, your body will shut down detox. So the body does the very same thing with vitamin A. Like, let's say, I've seen it before. I've had people do this. People are doing the vitamin A detox. They get off the vitamin A, and all of a sudden they start detoxing or dumping vitamin A coming out. And they're getting very obvious vitamin A symptoms vitamin A toxicity related symptoms. I've had people do this. If it's more than they can handle, sometimes I'll tell them, just eat a little bit of vitamin A. It'll shut it down.
Okay.
because the body goes, oh, wait, this toxin's coming in. We can't stop. We got to stop dumping it. And they put it in and then it just shuts it down. And I'll say, maybe you don't go so hardcore on the low vitamin A. Maybe people might take out, they might kind of do it stepwise. They might take out their supplements first. They might take out liver next. They might take out carrots next. They might kind of go stepwise in it to make the detox not happen so hard and so fast, because then the body kind of can get a balance of stuff going in and out and it can kind of catch up. Most people don't want to do that. They're just like, get this crap out of me. Now that I know it's bad, I don't want it in me anymore. And I'll deal with the detox and be done with it.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Rebel Health Coach podcast. Wow, the year is coming to an end fast. Got some general housekeeping today. If you would like to sign up for my newsletter, and if you would like to get general information from me via email, up-to-date things like what to do about this and what to do about that, and some podcast episode releases, text REBEL to 66866. Again, text REBEL to 66866. Next up, I would like to let you know that I have some spots available starting now. I've got a couple seats available for the end of the year, and then I've got 4 spots open at the beginning of 2020. If you would like to do that, or if you're not sure, you can schedule a free consultation with me by going to my website, www.thomunderwood.net. Again, www.thomunderwood.net. Schedule a free 20-minute consultation with me to see A, if we're a good fit, and B, if I can help you. If you feel like shit and you want to lose some weight, or you just feel generally thuggish, not sleeping well, need some help with your gut, please go to www.thomunderwood.net and sign up for a free 20-minute consultation with me, and we'll discuss you and see what I can do for you. And if you don't feel we're a good fit, that's okay also. I appreciate you listening to today's episode. Please rate and review the show and share this episode with a friend. Thank you so much, and much love to you all. There's a couple of things I want to address before we close out today, because I know you got to go and I got to go. One thing that I wanted to address real quick for men especially, is about estrogen, testosterone, and aromatase activity from vitamin A.
Oh yeah. Well, this is good. This is a short one. I have multiple papers showing that retinoic acid directly damages the Sertoli cells in the testes. It directly damages the Leydig cells in the testes. So those are, your sperm producing cells and your testosterone producing cells respectively. And I also have papers showing that vitamin A increases aromatase activity. So, wait, let me go to the best study.
Okay.
Because I know, some other people have talked about, we have a thing in society where, well, I'm not going to get into that. People will understand what I'm talking about when I get there. So there was rats. I believe there was rats. It's either rats or mice. I can't keep track of which one was which. But so in the pregnant dams, the pregnant mother rats, they gave them vitamin A toxicity. And then some of the rats were born. And what they found in these rats was they were finding what they called, back then, the older term was true hermaphrodites. So they were finding, these were male rats, but what they were finding in the testes was they were finding some ovary tissue in the testes. So we seem to have difficulties these days with lots of people figuring out things like sex and gender. there seems to be a lot of confusion. This very well could be, and then there's also the what are they? I forget the movie. It was The Disappearing Male. You can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
It's about male fertility and male sperm counts and how they're just
Plummeting.
Plummeting. Vitamin A destroys the Sertoli cells and the Leydig cells. Post-retinoid sexual dysfunction, inducing infertility in men using retinoic acid breakdown blockers. Like there's a paper where they're theorizing this. Now let me just have fun for 1 second. in terms of reproductive health.
Right.
So Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation, they have been noted that one of their goals, particularly for places like Africa, to help those populations, they have very specifically said that they advocate population control. They've said it, got Bill Gates on YouTube saying it. Go to their website, you can find it. That's their goal. So do they put their money where their mouth is? This is the question. What do they advocate? What do they suggest for population control? Okay, they support Planned Parenthood. Makes sense that one of the ways to have less people would be to kill babies, right?
Right.
I mean, okay, so we have that. Then we get into the shots. They support the shots. And Bill Gates has been saying, he's quoted in one thing saying, if we can get the shots really well covered, we could potentially reduce the population by like 10 to 15%. And everybody saw that quote and they're like, what? Why would vaccines, there goes the word. Why would they?
I'm waiting for the hate mail now. They're going to shut me down. Google's going to shut me down.
You can edit that out. Why would the shots, we'll layer that in. Why would the shots cause population to go down? That doesn't make any sense unless it does make sense, unless that's there. Then the last thing that they really support a lot is they have sponsored the research and development of a genetically modified golden rice for Asian countries, which this rice is yellow. It makes its own beta carotene. And they have also sponsored the development of a genetically modified banana that also makes beta carotene for Africa. 2 parts of the world with very large populations like to eat rice
and bananas.
If carotenoids and vitamin A was something healthy, so if the shots and carotenoids helped people live longer and increased population, that would be directly opposed to their stated goals.
Right.
So is it that they're completely wrong? Or is that they know something that we don't? So that's all I have on that topic.
Right. All right. I'm not going to touch that or gender and gender formation of retinol. I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole.
That's all right. Somebody has to. I can do it.
I agree. I'm not going to disagree. Or the shot. Let's jump into vitamin A to vitamin D real quick.
Okay.
Now we're taught that, and I've been taught that vitamin D deficiency is very high, and that you want your levels between, what did we say, 40 to 60, or 40 to 60, 30 to, I like to see them around. Anyway, so let's talk about vitamin D, because this one, and I'm going to say this because since I've been following you and digging into and putting this podcast together, I was taking 10,000 IU of vitamin D a day. And since I started prepping for this 2 or 3 weeks ago, I stopped taking it. And I really feel amazing after I stopped taking vitamin D.
Yep.
And now I live in a state, and we're taught this is another thing we're taught, that if you live in the Midwest or North, you're not getting enough vitamin D. I don't live there. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, where it's sunny, and I'm outside a lot because I love the outdoors. So Let's go to vitamin D. Let's touch base on that and close out with two other questions.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so where to begin? So first of all, vitamin D is somebody great if you want to learn all about the deep mechanisms and pathways of vitamin D. His name is Jim Stevenson with Stephenson, Jim Stevenson on Facebook.
Yep. I had a conversation with him at 1 a.m.
Yeah. So he's great. And he does stuff that's over a lot of people's head. It's over my head oftentimes. So really what I want to first establish is that when he talks about vitamin D as a corticosteroid hormone. And in theory, if vitamin D can be made by our body and should be made by our body, is it really a vitamin? Or, does our body make vitamins or does our body make hormones? Our body tends to make hormones.
Okay.
So I tend to think of vitamin D, the vitamin D that is naturally produced by our body is a hormone and it should be treated and respected as such. And I tend to get into the ideas of hormone replacement therapy. Hormones are the most powerful thing in our body, for better or worse. So if you start giving them, you might just cause huge problems. I used to do hormone therapy with men. I used to do testosterone replacement therapy. I was good at it. But my philosophy drove me to digging deeper into the cause. And I did not like doing just hormones for guys. Because you saw it over time, like most guys on testosterone, they see that their dose stops working and they got to bump it up and they got to bump it up again. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I'm on the full dose, doc, but I'm not feeling that great from it anymore. And then you go, well, we didn't fix the problem. So anyway, so I look at vitamin D that is made by the body is what we want. Vitamin D that is a supplement. Well, first of all, after we talked about vitamin A as an adjuvant, chemotherapy, antibiotic, vitamin D is sold as Tetra D3. I think it's Tetra D3. It might be Terra D3, TERAD3. It is sold as a rat poison. Terra D3, look it up. Rat poison blocks to kill rats. And the funny thing is that they recommend the Terra D3 blocks, PLOX is how they call them blocks. It's used when the rats are resistant to the warfarin/coumadin type rat poison. So you use vitamin D when the warfarin won't kill the rats. How nuts is that? So vitamin D3 is the rat poison you go up a level to. That's the next level rat poison. So we have that. And that's been known for a long time, that vitamin D is rat poison, just like warfarin is rat poison, and we're still having people take it. So vitamin D supplements are not, and Jim is the expert in this, vitamin D supplements are not processed by the body in the same way that vitamin D from the sun is that we make. It's all about the proteins that bind to them. I'm not an expert in that. All I need to know, vitamin D supplements are bad, just like your experience. And vitamin D from the sun is good. Okay, so then how do we tie vitamin D and vitamin A together? I'm going to tell you that in the research, people will try to say that you can take vitamin D as an antagonist, as a protective thing against vitamin A, or an antagonist to protect you against too much vitamin A toxicity, and vice versa. So vitamin D and vitamin A are antagonistic to each other, and that's what the research says. Okay, so if too much vitamin D might bring down vitamin A, or too much vitamin A might push down vitamin D, and lots of scientists and doctors and everybody out there saying everybody's got low vitamin D, and I'm like, everybody's got high vitamin A. It all starts to fit together. And then we go, okay, so people will say, well, you can take magnesium and raise vitamin D, which is true. So how does magnesium raise vitamin D? Why would that work? What if I were to tell you that I have a paper showing that adding retinoic acid, vitamin A, to cells caused them to lose up to 30% of their magnesium? So then we go, wait, we have supposedly a magnesium deficiency epidemic too. Gosh, that's interesting. And then we have lots of people with arthritis and other. Let me back up 1 second. First, back to how did I figure out the? So I was back when I was into another health approach called RBTI, which is out there stuff. It's out there. The guy who started it, he had a book of kind of like just little ideas. So just if you could put all your ideas in a book in like a sentence or two, that was what this book was. And he said in the book, he said, too much vitamin D will lead to constipation. And I was like, I read that. And then at the time I was actually I thought I was going to be real smart, and I thought if I'm healthy, more vitamin D is better. So, everybody's taking 5,000. I thought, well, I'll take 2 25,000 unit vitamin D pills 1 day a week. That'll give me about 7,000 a day. It's fat soluble, so it should last me through the week. It should store and be just fine. The weird thing was every time I took that vitamin D, I didn't poop for 2 days. And when I read that quote, I was like, whoa. Okay, so I stopped the vitamin D. And soon after that, I think I took my hair mineral analysis course. And in hair mineral analysis, they know very well vitamin D supplements on a hair analysis will tend to raise calcium, because one of the symptoms of hypervitaminosis D, as in dog, is hypercalcemia. So this is weird. Hypervitaminosis A, one of the side effects is hypercalcemia. Hypervitaminosis D, one of the side effects is hypercalcemia. Boy, that would lead to a lot of calcium in us, right? How in the world are we building these arthritic joints full of calcium? Because we have too much of this stuff coming in.
Okay.
So just like when you stop taking the vitamin D, I'm going to guess your joints and your stiffness is less. Your joints feel better and you're less stiff because that's less calcium in your system. So how does vitamin A and vitamin D raise the calcium? Vitamin A actually directly takes the calcium out of your bones. That's what it does. This is how small doses of vitamin A still cause osteoporosis. So the hypercalcemia of vitamin A is eating away at your bone. Vitamin D supplements, because they're not monitored by your body, they're outside of the control of your body. What vitamin D supplements do is they increase the calcium absorption from your gut if there is calcium to be absorbed. If you take too much vitamin D, or if there's not enough calcium for the amount of vitamin D you take, that vitamin D will pull the calcium out of your bones. You can look it up online, vitamin D bone resorption. So, too much vitamin D supplements. The other problem with vitamin D is everybody's measuring 25-hydroxy vitamin D.
Right.
When actually the true active form of vitamin D that does the work, that either calcifies, it helps you to either make bone or calcify you, is calcitriol 1,25-hydroxy vitamin D. Dihydroxy. Doctors are not measuring the active form. They're measuring the storage form. And then assuming that if you have enough storage, you have enough active. Well, what Jim has seen in the literature and with people, and what I've seen with people, is when people have low 25-hydroxy, the normal stuff they measure, and they're taking vitamin D supplements, they have very high 125D. And they are calcifying themselves where they stand. So it looks like they're deficient in the storage form, but in the active form that does the calcification, they're very high. So, and then they take vitamin A and they eat lots of it. And they wonder, why does everybody have osteoporosis? And I go, I know why. So basically, and what I've seen with people who are, there are papers out there showing that the lowest mortality risk, the lowest risk of death from any cause, in terms of where someone's vitamin D levels are, is between 20 to 40. So we have everybody shooting, like you were saying, 40 to 60. And even lifeguards in Australia only were hitting like the 50s. So people who are like living in the sun were only up to the 50s. And we're saying we need to give everybody supplements to drive them up to Australia lifeguard levels. The problem is almost none of the research on vitamin D supplements is showing benefit. You cannot look at vitamin D in the way of saying So if somebody has good vitamin D levels, and then the other person has low vitamin D levels, low by whatever standard you're going by. And let's say the person with good vitamin D levels did not take vitamin D supplements to get there. The assumption that you can just give the low vitamin D person a supplement to bring their level up, and then that will give them the health of the person who did not need those supplements is completely asinine, and it's not working. Because the body processes vitamin D that we eat. And I mean, when I say vitamin D that we eat, I mean vitamin D that we eat, whether it's mushrooms or cod liver oil or anything like that. I'm not saying people have to avoid all vitamin D in foods, but trying to eat vitamin D or take supplements to raise your vitamin D levels is not going to work anywhere near the sun. The sun or UVB is great. The pills or the foods to try to do it is not.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate here a bit.
Yes.
Not on your end, though. But we've been fed a lot of BS from our government because milk is fortified with vitamin A.
Yep.
So if vitamin A vitamin A toxicity leads to vitamin D deficiency.
Right.
So milk is a bunch of shit.
Yeah. I call dairy is what I call the perfect storm of vitamin A problems. So remember, I said vitamin A leads to hypercalcemia.
Right.
Vitamin D leads to hypercalcemia. And what mineral does milk have a lot of?
Supposedly.
Calcium.
Right.
It has a lot of calcium.
Right.
It's like gasoline on a fire. You're just like, storm. So you're feeding the calcium in there for the vitamin D and the vitamin A to raise. And then people wonder why when they get rid of when they get rid of dairy out of their diets, they feel so much better. There's a sulfur problem with dairy. That's a whole nother matter.
That's another.
That just adds another layer of why dairy is such a problem. I don't get why people. I mean, dairy. Okay, I'll admit, dairy tastes good.
Right.
But I've joked before that if scientists could figure out a way to make human waste taste good, people would eat that too.
Right.
Like just because something tastes good doesn't mean it's good for you.
Right.
Humans love fat. We love the mouthfeel, and it doesn't, oh gosh. Getting rid of nearly all dairy out of a person's health, out of a person's diet is like one of the easiest ways to get healthier.
Right.
It's quite simple. But yeah, vitamin A problem, vitamin D problem, calcium problem. I mean, what do they say? What was it? Human breast milk has something like 4 times less calcium in it than cow milk does.
Right.
So why are we worried about when we're adults? This is one of my jokes. Why are we worried about as adults getting the same amount of calcium that babies need? And secondly, this is one of my favorites. So babies are growing faster than they ever will again in their lives. We give them human breast milk to facilitate that because it gives them lots of calories and fat and protein, and it passes through their digestive system quickly so that they can eat more. That's why babies get hungry so quick, is because they just digest it so fast. It's through them. They want to eat more. So if milk is a perfect growth food, it is a food of growth. So when we are adults and we are done growing upwards, what is the only other direction that we can grow? Outwards.
Right.
It's a growth food. That's what it does.
Well, so what you're saying is, if I reduce my vitamin A, that will increase my natural vitamin D, and it'll also make me lose weight.
Quite likely, yes. There are parts of when people are detoxing vitamin A that, I mean, like we talked about, vitamin A is an aromatase. It stimulates aromatase activity, and so it's a poison on the way out, and it's a poison on the way in. So over time, we do see, as people do it long enough, we do see weight loss just kind of happen.
Right.
But sometimes during the detox, just like with any detox, you can get the effects of toxicity during the dumping, because it's whether it's in your blood or not. I do have 2 studies. One was on oh gosh, one was on South Korean women and the other one was on, I want to say it's Indian men. And what they showed was basically that BMI and estrogen and decreased testosterone, as vitamin A went up in the blood, serum retinol, they saw higher estrogen, lower testosterone, higher BMI. What do we have a problem with in this country these days?
BMI,
too much estrogen, the estrogen dominance theory, and we have tons of men who don't have enough testosterone. Like, I can do this all day. I have so much research in my head about this. And I have it on my website. If people go to the website, nutritionrestored.com, and they go to the public forum, there's a second section. So the first section is general stuff. The second section is all my vitamin A toxicity stuff. There's probably 400 posts in there, all referenced. I don't write stuff and expect people to believe me. I never liked anybody who just says, just believe me. I put references on there. People appreciate that. They might say, well, I don't understand the reference, but at least you're trying to show
what you're doing. You're backing it up.
It's truth. One of the biggest things that I'm into that has to happen in this world for it to turn around is people have to tell the truth.
Right.
They have to be punished for lying.
Right.
The world will never come around if people are not punished for lying and encouraged to tell the truth. And that is what has to happen.
All right.
So
I appreciate you've taken the time today, man. I'm sure I would love to do another one with you because I enjoyed this. And honestly, this took me like I went down, like I said earlier, I was going down rabbit hole because I want to back it up too. I'm like, all right, show me this.
Mm-hmm.
The more I did this, the more I delve in, the more facts I came up with backing it up like you'd have done. And a lot of it came from you, and a lot of it came from Grant. And then the guy I talked to at 1 a.m. last night, Stevenson.
Yes, Jim Stevenson. Yes.
Jim Stevenson. I sent him a friend request at 1 a.m. Of course, he's in New Mexico, I think. So he was awake.
I wouldn't have been.
Yeah. Anyway, last question before I close out, besides saying thank you very much. And maybe we can do this again because I would love to have you on because you're a wealth of knowledge. And I enjoy that because there's a lot of people not backing this shit up.
Right.
And I'm sure you don't have much time for this because you are a research guru. But if you had 30 minutes to an hour to kill, what album or artist would you put on to listen to?
Oh, wow. We're going into music here. Oh, my gosh. Depends on the mood. I really do like Tool and Metallica.
I can see that in you.
That's from my harder exercising days. I've kind of grown away from my buddy and I talk about this a lot. And it's like, everybody's listening to music while they work out. And I'm kind of like, I kind of look at that as like escapism now. I'm not trying to escape my reality. I don't drive with music in my car.
Okay.
People might think I'm like a psychopath now. But I don't drive with music in my car. I don't play music at home. So my music references are kind of like they're going to be old stuff. Okay. I'm playing like some electronic music for my boy that a buddy of mine who was a DJ, he made me my own like custom dance CD.
Okay.
And they like that stuff. My daughter's a dancer, so she loves music.
Okay.
But I really, I look at my old CD case that's in my car and I kind of think, oh, I'm going to put on a CD and I flip through it. And it's just like, my life has changed so much since those CDs. Like those were great for that time. And now I'm kind of like, people might want to think I'm old, but I'm like, I think about downloading MP3s and putting them on a playlist. And I'm just like, I ain't got no time for that. So yeah, I don't listen to the radio. I'm just kind of so out of touch with music.
Okay.
But I do need to listen to the new Tool album. I do need to get that.
It's really good.
Good. I'm sure it is.
It's really good.
I fought to the front row of a Tool show back when I was into that stuff. Had to save a girl from suffocating because she was falling down into the people.
Wow.
So I had my days of, front row of Korn, front row of Tool, front row at Deftones, getting to sing a line of the song into the microphone. Those were fun days, but those are past.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, brother. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've been waiting for this one, and like I said, I've been following you on Facebook for about a year, and just reading your stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to him. So I'm glad you came on. I appreciate you very much, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining in today with the Rebel Health Coach, Tom Underwood. And be sure to subscribe to the show so you can catch all the episodes. With desire and commitment, you can implement a lifestyle of wellness and fitness. For the support, encouragement, and tools you need to be successful, visit tomunderwood.net.